Hello.
Thrilled to be here with you, Aaron, to end.
Have you guys gotten enough on AI today? Is there still more to talk about? Have we not accomplished everything?
It depends if we've talked about token maxing.
Oh, okay. Have you guys talked about token maxing yet? Okay, can we do an entire panel on token maxing?
The whole
okay.
panel.
Okay, fine. Okay.
So Aaron famously launched Box as a file service in college. He built it into $1 billion business for managing enterprise content, and is distinguished for his humor such that Business Insider wrote not one, but 3 articles remarking on funny things you tweeted.
Okay, weird. Okay.
So it's amazing to have you here. So we're going to get into how
Reuters doesn't have that channel of...
No, it's...
Okay.
We're working on it. We're working on it. So we'll get into how Box is competing in a moment, but I first want Aaron's view on how AI is changing Box internally. So we're more than 3 years after the launch of ChatGPT. Bring us inside the Box boardroom. What's the conversation like right now? What are your directors saying they want to see on AI right now?
Probably more and more. I think that's probably what we're all experiencing. And it's interesting because I think we all live this duality, which is run as aggressively as possible, all kind of like adjacent to the token maxing ethos, and then immediately, but what is the ROI? And oh my God, I can't believe you just spent that much money on that thing. And so we have this sort of schizophrenia, I think, as probably we all face this if you're a CIO or on a board or CEO or anywhere, kind of implementing this technology. And that's just as true at Box, where we're like, on one hand, insanely excited when we go and deploy an awesome new agentic workflow internally, and on the other hand, we instantly sort of see, like, why is that one user, using like 2/3 of the team's budget in one day, and then you go and like try and dive into that. So I think we're all sort of facing that, but maybe the biggest way to characterize, I think, the journey that we've all been on as an industry collectively is we're very clearly moving from this world where AI is about interacting with a chat system and answering questions, and ultimately I would sort of characterize it as being rate limited by how much the human can do going back and forth with the AI, to more of a model where we now have agentic systems, and you're no longer as rate limited by that human's sort of role in the workflow. The agent can go off and do real work, and actually we're sort of untethered now. The agent's untethered by our ability to go back and forth with it, and it can go and generate much more meaningful output, whether that is in our world answering an RFP from thousands of past RFP documents, or doing research on a market opportunity, or obviously doing software development inside of a software workflow. That's clearly where things are moving. And so we're constantly looking around the organization to say, where are the next big opportunities where we can think about this new augmented productivity and intelligence that we have, and where are the workflows in the business that have historically been sort of gated by intelligence. And that could be in the form of researching something, or connecting data between systems, or being able to look up information in the background. And we're trying to find all of those workflows in the company that we can go and unleash to ultimately then enhance the human side of the productivity.
What percentage of your software is coded by AI these days?
It's increased. It's now firmly in the majority, but I would say we're not we're by being an enterprise software company serving B2B customers, some of the largest institutions in the world. I would say we can't do the full, like the things you see on Twitter from the startups. We can't do that, which is not reviewing the code, or having everybody has 50 agents running in parallel. We're not on that end of the continuum, simply because the stuff that we work on is obviously incredibly mission critical for our customers. I don't know if anybody saw the recent example this weekend, but somebody had a cursor agent deleted his database, and now he had to do a kind of a 3-month rollback for his system. Well, we can't afford to do that type of execution. And so how do you enable nearly 1,000 engineers to be able to go and use agents responsibly, both balancing the maximum amount of productivity we can get with the reliability and sustainability of the code base, and the security and compliance that we have to take on?
So could you step back and help us understand how you see profit growing or revenue growing this year when you consider the bill from OpenAI or Anthropic is through the roof, but you're not doing full agentic coding on all software that you're building, but there's new business. Like what does it net out to?
I think it nets out to for us. We happen to be in a growth side of the equation because so it's a little bit meta, but because our product is growing faster because of AI. We are on the side where we want to hire more people and then obviously use AI to make them more productive. So I think it mostly nets out where the growth ends up solving the cost side of the equation because we're in a pretty dynamic part of the space. So I'm not as worried about sort of how do you pay the token bills simply because there's so much upside in the productivity that we can go and drive. But we look across the entire organization, and obviously there's some degree of have and have-nots on who gets the most tokens and what parts of the workflows have the most leverage from AI. But overall, we want to try and have every part of the business be as AI forward as possible.
So is there a job that didn't exist at Box, like sales engineering in the past, and then what are you not hiring for at all these days?
Yeah, so I'm 100% convinced that this is at a minimum a role that will emerge right now. Whether it fades out over time, I don't have a. I mean, I'm sure be a fun debate for everybody, but for at least the foreseeable future, there's definitely a role. We have a couple of people that have become this role, and then we're going to be hiring for this role as well. Is effectively these kind of agent deployers or operators or managers in the organization. And I think despite maybe what Silicon Valley's intention would be or what would be ideal in an ideal world where like the agent just kind of gets deployed inside of your system, whether it's ChatGPT or Claude or a homegrown system, and it just all of a sudden is off and running and automating your workflows. I think what we can all feel is that it's actually much harder than that. And I think the reality is we've seen these insane productivity gains from coding, and I think most of the audience is relatively technical, so you've probably done this yourself, and it's just incredible what the AI can now do from a coding standpoint. But if you look at coding and then compare it to other workflows in the enterprise, coding actually ends up looking more basically different, much more different than we ever realized before. And agents are almost emphasizing these differences. So with coding, basically you're inside of a text editor most of the day. The entire in-out kind of information in and the thing it produces is text. So it's effectively all of a text-based medium for the most part. The models are obviously insanely well trained on coding because so much of the code is already online in the form of open source and repos across GitHub. And then the users are obviously, by definition, the most technical users in your organization. So when Claude Code says, I'm about to install this NPM package, they can just say yes and move on with their life because they understand like spatially what that's going to do. And when the agent needs to access an MCP server or talk to some other data system via CLI, they already have a fluency in what all that meant. And how do I make sure that these systems integrate well to be able to produce the sort of ultimate product that I'm trying to do? So that's like the coding world. And so then obviously you have this incredible escape velocity for AI coding. Now go to the rest of work where you're in marketing or finance or legal or supply chain. And you're trying to get those same productivity gains. Well, you have a little bit of a different set of factors at play. One, a lot of the context that you work with is not text in and out. It's information that's analog. It's undigitized information. It's something that you just learned in a meeting down the hall that you have to like figure out how do you get to the agent. Your systems are not as sort of often cloud forward as a lot of the coding systems have been. So you have a lot of data that's in legacy environments, and in our world we see this because it's in network file shares, or it's on-premises document management systems, or it's in some ERP system that isn't playing nicely with agents. And then you have the real kicker, which is just the messy world of access controls and entitlements. And so the agent sort of only has partial access to the information it needs to do the work because the human only had partial access. And so, but the human could actually go and talk to the colleague and say, hey, I'm missing this context. Can you open that up to me? But the agent has no way of actually doing that inside that workflow. Or even worse, you have the opposite problem where the human has access to too much, and now the agent has access to too much. And so now the agent is a security vector for the organization. So you can't just like give it free range access to everything. So that's the real world of how of the complexities of how do you get sort of agents to start to automate the workflows across the rest of knowledge work. And so this is sort of the big opportunity. Now, tying it back, and I'm surprised that I'm able to actually bring this back to the question, because I was like going somewhere else with this entire thing. There was a 90% chance I wasn't going to pull it off. But so to your question, I think the reason why you're going to need these sort of AI embedded roles, and they might come from IT, they might come from the business, is because of all the complexity I just mentioned. Who's the person that's going to go look at the workflow and say, actually, this is how we're going to redesign access to context. Here's how we're going to make sure the agent has access to the right data sources in the workflow. Here's the moment where a human does have to review the output because we know that there's still going to be a 3% error rate, and so you want the human to review at this stage, but it's not going to bottleneck the agent because they were able to do this much of the work. Like, all of that has to be designed, and it's basically doing systems thinking to figure out where does the agent need to show up in the business process, where does the human show up in the business process, how do you get your systems ready for this, how do you start to document your workflows and the processes with the right context. That, it's like, it's not going to work if that's somebody's part-time sort of side job. And you can see it. There's always a person, everybody has these people on their team right now. They're doing this at 10 p.m., which is fantastic, and God bless the free labor you're getting. But at some point, if you want to go and industrialize this, you probably want the person who's like, I am the AI transformation person, I'm the agent operator in go-to-market, or maybe even the sub-level of sales or in marketing. And I think most organizations will end up needing that kind of talent. And my instinct is it's like the future IT role most likely, but where it comes from and where it ends up, I think, is still open. And the only other final point is this is also why I'm super optimistic on the future of engineering, because I think that engineers are going to make the best they're going to have the best characteristics for a lot of these roles. So maybe 10 years ago, that engineer was building an internal application, or they're doing something with SAP and doing an upgrade. That same engineer or the future engineer coming into the organization will be well fit for, now they are the person deploying agents in your business processes. And I think, if anything, again, back to despite maybe where the industry would like to go, I think these jobs are getting more technical, not less. I think because of the capability of the agents are getting more powerful. So now that's like, you're handing a bazooka to possibly a non-technical person that could blow up the whole thing. And you might want somebody who really understands their way around these systems. So I see this as a fantastic sort of future engineering job as well.
So I want to talk about how you are actually addressing that market opportunity and trying to give a bazooka, not maybe the lawyer, or yes, but something less lethal, I guess, than a bazooka. So how tell me, I think you might have news actually on kind of how companies can automate more of their work.
Yeah, and so we as you can imagine, for us, we're super excited by this moment, because what agents are really good at is tapping into unstructured data. And what are your files? They're unstructured data. And so every research file, every contract, every marketing asset, every invoice, every financial document, all of that contains really important, valuable context that agents can go and leverage. So like we're all in on agents. We just launched, for instance, a couple weeks ago, a new Box agent that has much more capable sort of set of use of tools across your Box environment. And that's only possible because of things like GPT-5, in this case 5.4, but now 5.5 is even better, and Opus 4.6 and now 4.7. So that's the Box agent strategy. Maybe don't like overly tweet about this, but we have some news coming out tomorrow, which is kind of the next generation of really how do you get those agents to be deployed in a broader workflow. And so we have a new product that we'll be rolling out called Box Automate, where you can design your deterministic workflow. So you really need guardrails for how these agents are going to operate. But once you define the deterministic sort of workflow and you define that process, then you can drop in agents at different points in that process. And so maybe it's still a bazooka, but it's a narrowly defined bazooka that is sort of just wired into the parts of the process that you want the agent to get deployed in, and then you pop in the human to do the ultimate review, and it can use different tools within Box. So we do see the future of how we're going to work with these agents, often not as a chat back and forth, but as these agentic workflow systems. So this is the capability that we're building out. But then, oh, by the way, we work fully headlessly, so you'll be able to use this across any other orchestration environment that customers are working with.
What's the toughest thing that Box Automate can tackle? Like what's an example?
Yeah, I mean, if you just think about it as anything that you want to be able to do at scale with your unstructured data, you could have 10 million invoices. You want to process them all and pull out the kind of key data from every one of those invoices. Or we have any kind of life sciences research organization. There's all these new use cases where you want to go and simulate drug trial development at a much more in a kind of in parallel way than you could have previously with humans, where you're kind of more sequentially and serially bound. Any of these kind of workflows where you have data coming in, you need to process it, you need to automate the understanding of it, and then it pops out to another system or a human has to review it. Those are the kind of things that Box Automate will help power.
And last question on this,
yeah.
I guess, what's the strategy? Is it to get people to use Box more, a particular Box plan more,
yeah.
and how does that all work?
Yeah, I mean, we are definitely trying to make more money. I got to admit that is a part of the strategy here. We are trying to balance, how to make this as available as possible. Most of our enterprise product plans will include Box Automate, but when you want a custom agent to be deployed in the workflow, that gets sort of enabled by our new Enterprise Advanced tier of functionality, and that's where a lot of our kind of agentic workflow efforts are going, by design, because that's sort of the right place to be, adding more and more of the automation value. So this is something that we're seeing a lot of our customers adopt, which is super exciting. But again, I want to balance, like, we are as excited to be used in a headless fashion, which I think is a major topic for anybody deploying, AI within their organization, or through our user interface, and so we're kind of working on both those fronts.
So talking about you mentioned Opus 4.7,
yeah.
GPT 5.5. Box relies on AI developed by other model providers.
Yep.
So is lock-in inevitable for AI from Anthropic or OpenAI in the future?
Well, I think as long as we have at a minimum 3, but I think increasingly you could argue that there's 4+, especially as you add OSS in there. I think you're going to see. These aren't going to be fully fungible. Like, there are some nuances. We see these interesting patterns. You have to change your prompt. You have to kind of use the models a little bit differently. But we are seeing enough of a competitive dynamic in the market where these models want to leapfrog each other, where I don't think that you're yet seeing lock-in in the market. And I think it's probably more akin to the hyperscalers and cloud infrastructure than maybe other paradigms you could think about as like an OS and then the application stack. I think it's right now, at least, it's closer to the hyperscalers, and it does take real work to move your workloads from EC2 to the Google Cloud equivalent. But I mean, if you have the right layers of abstraction and you have everything in Kubernetes, and then you can kind of deploy these things in a containerized fashion, it gets a little bit easier. So I think there's some natural lock-in simply because there's convenience to getting used to a certain platform provider, but it's not lock-in at the scale of what we've seen, at least in some historical areas of software. And I think we all see it. Like, we have engineers that like one day they're like the biggest Claude Code users on the planet, and then a month later they say, no, Claude Code is like so February. We're all Codex now. And this is just going to happen, I think, in AI for quite some time.
Has that change happened or not?
I wouldn't like be able to generalize what I just said in any statistical way, but the anecdotes are happening every day.
And so you've also been very outspoken about how you think SaaS is dead. I'm kidding.
Yeah, yeah, that's been my main topic, I'm sure. Yeah.
So what will it take for investors to stop questioning if SaaS and Box have their days numbered?
Well, actually, if you look at year-to-date performance, fortunately, we've been a little bit protected from some of that conversation. But I would say it's a general topic that is important across the industry, and it sort of stands to reason, right? If we all used to log into software to do all of our work, and now we log into an agent above that software, and the agent is doing all of its work, then the question is, okay, what's the value of the underlying system? And I think it's actually fair to say that there's probably a continuum where some systems, the agent actually is going to make even more useful or more valuable because the work that they're doing in that system is going up in value, and the importance of getting that system right is actually just as important, if not more than ever. And then there are some areas where you can kind of feel it, where you're like, well, the agent actually is now doing most of that work that I used to do in that piece of software. So then by definition, there's probably more of a compression at that part of the stack. So I think the fact that Wall Street is having this conversation, and we have this conversation with IT leaders as well, is like a very relevant thing. And we know how markets work. Like everybody sort of has to have their freak out first, and that ends up being kind of like roughly indiscriminate. And then eventually people kind of parse the differences. But there's some software in Box where there's a 0% chance I would ever have somebody internally go and build an equivalent solution or have the agent sort of replace in any meaningful fashion, because the workflow is just so critical that I want it done exactly the same way every time. Having agreement and a shared system of record for where that data is going to go and how it's going to be managed, I want it to always be done the same way. And in fact, I might even have like 100 times more agents using that system than we ever had people. And so if I look at something like a Salesforce as a sort of a, an objective, not non-Box example, I would say the use of Salesforce is going to go up rapidly, because we're going to have agents doing unbelievable amounts of account intelligence and lead management and account planning for us, far more than our sales team ever could have. So it'll be like we have a sales team that is 5 times larger because of agents than what we have today. And so can Salesforce command more value in that world? I would argue yes. Now, are there some parts of a product portfolio that go down in value? Sure, maybe. But I think we all have to kind of work through that. But the thing that is not going to happen, I'm sorry, I'm just like, and I think 90% of this audience would agree, but maybe there's 10% that is, you guys are going to throw a Hail Mary. You're not going to vibe code an ERP system. I don't think you're going to vibe code a CRM system. The risk is simply too high. The fact that that is where you would go and spend your AI energy in a world of abundance, I think is sort of unrealistic. Like replacing, one of your core software systems doesn't seem like the place to use these very expensive tokens versus make your employees more productive. And so I think the market just needs to now kind of understand where does this all shake out and see sort of how the deck chairs land. For us, we're accelerating our growth rate because of AI. And so we're not sort of seeing the trends that I think the commentary is sort of related to, but I don't disagree that we should be having the conversation, or that even Wall Street should be trying to parse this stuff. I think it's important.
So last question,
okay,
on a fun one since we're over time. So we've seen executives like Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella, Google co-founder Sergey Brin, using AI themselves to code or spin up demos, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Product managers and designers are doing the same. So is using AI for coding the best use or a good use of a CEO's time? and are you doing this in Box's products?
I would say everybody in Box product management or engineering would say it's not a good use of my time. Because it's mostly very annoying, because I'll send them links and they'll say, I built this last night, why is it taking us so long? So it's like probably one of the most frustrating Slack messages to get. So they probably wish that like CEOs were not allowed to use these tools. I think it's incredibly useful for any executive to be in the technology. There was a great post. There's this anonymous Twitter account called Bucko Capital or Bucko Capital, and he basically tweeted that there's this sort of AI psychosis that executives have, where they sort of developed the psychosis. It was like, we can replace all the people, and because they use AI a little bit, and they sort of think that they can replace all the people. I actually think there's sort of a journey that you go on, and I'm sure most people here at least have sort of been on this journey where like you use AI a little bit and you're like, oh my God, it's going to automate the entire business. And then you use AI a lot and you're like, oh my God, we need humans for almost every one of these steps. and so if you don't use the tools a tremendous amount, it's actually like you have to use the tools almost like far more than you would think, because like having half knowledge about this space is actually the dangerous territory, because you're kind of like you probably think you can either over automate or you automate the wrong parts of the workflow. So I've had to kind of get to the other end of the journey of like deploying real software, not in our production environment, but like on the internet that like works, and then you're like, oh shoot, like, God, I really don't want to be responsible for like when the Axios NPM package, vector happens. I don't want to go and update that thing, and then I don't want to have to like do a security review of this random thing I vibe coded. And oh, it was very hard actually to get the right data to the agent, so that's probably going to take somebody to go and manage that. So you have to kind of use the tools enough to then realize where their flaws are. as opposed to just a little bit where it all seems very magical and you didn't actually review the thing that it did. And so then you kind of have this maybe like naivete around like what it actually can go and do. So I think it's a very good use of time right now to be using AI as much as possible because it actually makes you more realistic about AI.
So that's a great message to Box employees and to our audience to end on. Okay. Thank you so much, Aaron.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Both for that. I think that's a wonderful way to end the day. He's going to be doing jokes and drinks in just a minute, correct? Hopefully. But really, that was wonderful, guys. Thank you very much. We covered a lot of ground today. Vision, execution, infrastructure, ROI, risk. We also learned that we should stop saying that employees will not be replaced with AI. They'll be replaced with employees using AI because it's trite and silly and just not true. So we are not going to be saying that. And tomorrow we're going to be focused on scaling with confidence. We're going to have thought leaders from Paramount, Manulife, Authentic Brands, and lots of wonderful companies. Also tomorrow morning for you early birds, we have a workshop for women in AI. So we would really love for you to attend that. And if you're going to attend it, we ask that you go to the app and register so that we know you're coming. I'll try to be there, but that's a little early for me. But I know some of you are running